Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley speaking to you from Washington, D.C. It is the last program of 2012, the last program of the old year. We're recording here on the afternoon of Friday, December 28th, and that puts us right in the middle of the danger zone for genocidal austerity, killer cuts, things that dig into the blood and bone of the American people, ordained by the bankrupt financier elites, and then conduited in through the two parties, the Wall Street Democrats and the reactionary Republicans. And let's not forget that within that larger reactionary Republican Party, we've got a fascist minority now. We've got 40 to 50 of those Tea Party lunatics who now begin to fulfill the full minimum definition of fascism. That is to say, they are union busters. They want genocidal austerity. They want to cut things like food stamps that will kill people. They are racists. They are aggressors. They're always interested in aggressive wars, or at least most of them are. So those 4 points, the union busting, the wage gouging to the point of genocide, the service cuts in the social safety net and so forth that go with it, the question of racism, and the question of aggressive war. If you fulfill those 4, don't look now, but you may be a fascist. And whether you call yourself a libertarian or an exponent of the Austrian school makes very little difference. So that's what we got. We've got this undigestible hardcore of 40 or so fascistoids, at least, proto-fascists, call it something like that. A lot of them are from the South. A lot of these are from the rural South, from one-party gerrymandered districts. They are, to some extent, beyond the reach of the National Republican Party, bad as that is. Although they have their vulnerabilities, and we'll look into it. Mainly it's money. And the money, of course, comes from the money centers. The money comes from Wall Street, the Koch brothers, and some other people that we'll get to know, right? This honcho Stevenson, who has now bought a piece of the Freedom Works. Yes, Richard Stevenson, an entrepreneur in the medical realm. We'll be looking carefully into him, and I'm sure others will be too. But right now, here's the rundown. We're in the middle of it. It should be the quiet week between the years, but it's not. Obama scheduled to meet with the congressional leaders, that is to say, Boehner, Pelosi, Reid, and McConnell at the White House this afternoon. That's Friday afternoon, the 28th of December. There's going to be some kind of a caucus of the Democrats, I believe, in the House this afternoon also. So we are waiting. Now, we know what the danger is. Last week, Obama was eager to stab his own base in the back, to betray the hardworking campaigners who put him back into office. Remember, this time around, he's not the Messiah. He's not the Mahdi. He does not walk on water. He was a desperate demagogue who needed all the help he could get to go over the top. And without those union campaign workers, civil rights organizations, and so forth, he would have lost. Remember, he won by now, I think the count is something like 350,000 votes. You move 350,000 votes in certain key states out of one column and into another, and Obama loses the election. So please don't tell us about the mystical, apocalyptic significance of Obama. He doesn't have it. He's a desperate demagogue and a completely discredited political hack who just turned out to be, in the eyes of many, somewhat lesser evil compared to Romney. And I think there's something to that. But now we've got to deal with Obama, not with Romney. So his desire is what he told the editorial board of the Washington Post a little bit less than 4 years ago, in the week before his inauguration. And you can read this in Surviving the Cataclysm, your guide to the worst financial crisis in world history. In the 2009 edition of Surviving the Cataclysm, we have this very interesting meeting of Obama with the Washington Post editorial board, where he talks about his administration in terms that he never mentioned during his election campaign, never said a word about it. It's time to cut Social Security. That's the easy part. It's time to cut Medicare, says Obama. That, he says, is the hard part. And so he's telling that to these Washington Post insiders, this gaggle of austerity ghouls, and it turned out that that was what he wanted to do as president. Right? That was the actual purpose of his presidency as he saw it. So the danger is that he will act on that Malthusian, bureaucratic, elitist Wall Street creed. So we are putting up the slogans of no cuts. There must be no cuts in the social safety net, none whatsoever. And we want the Wall Street sales tax. We want the 1% Wall Street sales tax on all stocks, bonds, derivatives, over-the-counter and exchange-traded derivatives. 1%, half of it goes to the federal treasury, half of it goes to the states. At that point, the need, so-called need for austerity, or the pretext for austerity vanishes, because you have essentially restored the budget to a rough equilibrium. Notice also Wall Street pays no taxes. Isn't it interesting, this entire hysterical, long-winded debate, and the main facts are left out. Wall Street pays no sales tax on their constant, incessant flash trading, program trading, high-frequency trading. They pay nothing. You pay sales tax. They pay nothing. And they pay no federal corporate income tax. Right? We reviewed it. You can see articles on Tarpley.net where I go through not just General Electric, the hedge fund, but Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank, Goldman Sachs, and so on down the line. They pay either 0 or 1% or 2% federal corporate income tax. In some years they get lucky, like Immelt of General Electric. He gets to be minus 43% one year. So he's getting money back from the federal government, and that's in the billions. So we want that obviously fixed. Right? Fix the loopholes and restore the income generation that used to come from the corporate income tax. If you read Surviving the Cataclysm again, you'll see that even into the 70s and 80s, the United States government used to get about a third of its revenue from the corporate income tax. And this has gone down to basically, well, very little compared to what it was. That's got to be restored. Don't talk to us about cutting entitlements until we've got the Wall Street sales tax and these people paying something in the neighborhood of 35%. And notice, Obama has even said he wants to cut that corporate income tax. I don't know why he bothers. Nobody pays it anyway. But he wants to curry favor with the few who still can't somehow weasel out of it. Now, the other thing, of course, you're worried about Social Security? Great. Remove the cap. Stop exempting income above about $105,000 from the Social Security payroll tax. And by the way, restore the Social Security payroll tax. Stop tampering with that, Obama. That was a dirty trick by Obama to weaken the finances of Social Security. Notice his approach to entitlements is not so much the direct Romney Texas Chainsaw Massacre approach, but it is let them wither on the vine, death of 1,000 cuts. So in the case of Social Security, it's that you can't tax the income over 105,000. We say remove that cap. The other thing then is Medicare. You want to put some money into Medicare. Stop gouging. Obama has gouged $700 billion. I think there's now a broad consensus that I used to estimate $500 billion gouged out of Medicare by Obama. Now it's up to $700 billion. And he wants to gouge out another $400 billion. So that's over $1 trillion in Medicare cuts from Obama, from the great Messiah. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Now, since we are on the brink of this idiotic cliff, it means that a dirty deal, a rotten compromise, the hand that held the dagger has stabbed it into the back of its own base, in some cases. You got to be ready to protest this. In other words, there's got to be some visible protest if and when the really outrageous occurs. So if you're around Washington, D.C., that will probably take the form of some kind of an emergency gathering at Lafayette Park across from the White House. That's probably where you get the most media, right? There are always cameras by the West Wing of the White House, so it's easy for them to come out if something occurs. Watch my Twitter feed. Watch Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed. If and when it happens, I'll let you know, and then we would want to gather, and of course do that wherever you happen to be. Go downtown, make a sign, no to austerity, Wall Street sales tax solves it, we don't need the cuts, and of course there's also the interesting theoretical problem that the cuts don't work. You cut the budget in this way, your deficit will be bigger. That important fact also seems to have gotten lost in the hysteria. Anyway, the Washington Post tells us here that the dirty deal that almost occurred last week was the following. Boehner and his clique, reactionaries, were offering $2 trillion in deficit reduction, they say, $1 trillion of tax increases. Now, there's a lot of very dubious garbage in there. He wants to, he's willing to have the rates rise for the millionaires, but doesn't get very specific. And $1 trillion in spending cuts. Now, remember, Boehner and Obama both build in the chained CPI, the chained consumer price index. And the real blunt term for that is gouging, chiseling, highway robbery, stripping you of your economic rights, conning you out of your pension rights, and so forth. So Boehner lists that as a spending cut, part of his $1 trillion, and Obama $933 billion. Obama has a little bit more in revenue, $1.3 trillion, but you get the idea. These are actually comparable, and they make much of the fact that the difference between the two is $450 billion. And Obama was eager to sell you out, eager to stab you in the back. And the only thing that stopped this from going into law last week was the fascist swamp of the Tea Party, those 40 lunatics there in the Republican Party. And again, because of the singular design of our universe, those evil people had actually done something good, because when evil fights evil, the result is a diminution in the net amount of evil in the world. And that may not be nice, that may not be comfortable, that may not be the universe that you wanted, but that's the one you've got. So live in it and try to make the best of it. So it's also very interesting that Boehner, the reason these 40 fascists have so much power is because Boehner has to defer to them, right? In other words, the reactionaries are afraid of the fascists. The reactionary 200 or so Republican representatives are very much afraid of the 40 or so fascists, because there's huge money. There's the Koch brothers and these other lunatic billionaires are behind the 40 fascists, the 40 tyrants, what can we call them? And the threat, of course, is that there's going to be a primary, right? The people in these gerrymandered districts do not fear a Democratic candidate very much, but they do fear an extreme right-wing, fascist Republican primary challenger. So Boehner could have passed his deal with Obama in the House last week, but he chose not to. He chose to try this idiotic Plan B, and in the Plan B, he couldn't get the 218. He was about 20 short, so it means that the Republicans are about, 240 at this point in the House. It means that there were about these 40 defections. So it would have been okay. Boehner could very easily have brought in the substance of his deal with Obama, put that in front of the House of Representatives. Most of the Democrats, of course, sadly would have voted for it, even with the entitlement cuts. They would have voted to destroy the historical identity of the Democratic Party defending the New Deal. They would have voted to renege on Obama's election promises, right? You can go on the internet and see all sorts of people saying, hey, Obama, I did not vote for this. You promised to defend the entitlements. Now you're gouging them. Now you're chiseling them. You are treachery incarnate. And he is, of course. That's his method. I've told you that for the last 5 years. Deception, dissembling, trickery, and so forth. That's the essence of Obama, right? Lying. The open reactionary is a different story, but that's not Obama. Obama's all under left cover. So Boehner could have passed the Senate formula had he been willing to do it with the majority, with the Democrats contributing most of the votes. But that's where we stand now. So, no cuts. The Washington Post, of course, whenever reactionary elitist politics are at stake, they're here to tell us that it's time to support the chained CPI. Isn't that something? This is the sort of boring, what can we say, complacent, boring oligarch Ruth Marcus. She says the chained CPI is a fairer measure of inflation because it reflects the fact that if you can't buy an expensive product, you fall back on a cheap one. If the price of a certain commodity in the basket of goods used to measure inflation, if the price rises for a certain commodity in the basket of goods used to measure inflation, consumers will choose a cheaper alternative. When the price of beef soars, we substitute chicken. Well, what you really mean is you replace that with chicken, don't you? She's incoherent and illiterate in addition to her other problems. But the notion here is that they're going to gouge you using that as an excuse. I remember the last time around with Boskin, he actually said it was you could get brie and chablis at your local deli, and that meant that inflation wasn't as bad as had been thought. So this is the chain CPI. Anyway, you get the quality of this. The main thing for these ghouls, for these austerity vampires, is that it leads to a reduction in the Social Security benefit, and it does it over time. It's the death of 1,000 cuts. It withers on the vine. And we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So here is the situation. Obama meets the Republicans, the congressional leaders in the White House this afternoon. There will be then intrigue all through the weekend. And the House of Representatives comes back at about 6 o'clock on Sunday evening. That would be the 30th of December. So they've got all day on the 31st for more intrigue. And watch Webster G. Tarpley. That might turn out to be a good day to go downtown and do some buttonholing, right? Position oneself between the House of Representatives and the Rayburn and other Cannon and so forth, Longworth office buildings, and see who you can buttonhole and talk up the Wall Street sales tax. The Washington Post wants to avoid the fiscal cliff at all costs. No, not at all costs, but they want to avoid it. And you can see, right, the oligarchical interest will be weakened if the existing mechanisms are triggered. The oligarchical plutocratic position is weakened because that then puts them into the soup. They are hit with the 5% tax increase, which in terms of the money means a whole lot more to them. It also, and this is worth stressing, for the Republican Party, the only ideological glue they really have for the whole party is this no tax hysteria, the mantra of no new taxes, right? It goes back to Bush in 1988, read my lips, no new taxes. He violated the pledge he paid by being thrown out of office. And since then, since Mad Dog Bush the Elder, this guy who is now in the hospital this weekend, since then, the Republicans have never, as far as most of them anyway, I think there were 2 or 3 for the stimulus, but I think for tax increases, never. This is their ideology. So if you can force through the idea that the taxes must go up, that doesn't solve a depression, to be sure, but it does tend to explode the ideological glue of the Republican Party, and that's probably worth doing, as I have tried to point out. The Democrats, of course, have a different ideological glue. The ideological glue of the Democrats, whether they know it or not, is the defense of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, unemployment benefits, food stamps, Head Start, WIC, and so forth, the child labor laws, these things. That is why people tend to vote for the Democratic Party. The problem is that the Democratic Party does not reflect that. It's, in a sense, it's a case of mistaken identity. The Democratic Party imagines itself as this loose confederation of different identity politics groups, ethnic, religious, gender, and other considerations. The Democratic Party itself is not so much aware of the glue. The Republicans are more aware of this importance of this tax question, also because their rich donors are there to remind them if they should ever forget. So if you want to break up the Republican Party, which is a laudable goal, you've got to make them essentially, got to smash them up between the ones who are going to go down in flames as kamikazes, no new taxes, and the ones who are willing to do it under pressure. On the Democratic side, you've got to lure them into what Obama is clearly willing to do, and that is to begin to gouge and chisel away at the entitlements. Now, Charles Krauthammer, the neocon, is somehow aware of this. He attributes to Obama a ruthless skill. I don't see any ruthless skill. I see bungling and capitulation, right? The guy who goes from I want 1.6 trillion of revenue to I want 1.4 to I want 1.2 doesn't seem to get anything in exchange. But Krauthammer says Obama's ruthless skill is to shatter the Republican Party to create a civil war among the Republicans. So I'm sorry, Krauthammer, that is there. That is the war between reactionaries and fascists. That's what we see. That the Tea Party says, Boehner, you're a reactionary, but you're not reactionary enough. You're not militant enough. The mega deaths from your austerity are insufficient for our calculation. So, however, it is important to bear in mind, we are in a situation where both of these parties could collapse over relatively short period of time. In other words, both of them are in a very parlous state. And I've never had any doubt. My perspective is that the Republican Party should collapse as a national party. That is, they can't do it. They cannot be allowed to govern in Washington, D.C. They're a party of sabotage, extortion, wrecking, blackmail, and so on, right? They are seriously planning now to use the debt ceiling as yet another occasion for another round of extortion and sabotage, right? Based on, once again, these 40 fascist congressmen. So that's the Republican Party. What they need to do is to dwindle to be a regional party for racists, xenophobes, and extreme reactionaries in the South, in the rural West, and so forth. And it is very interesting that seems to be the direction what's left of the Tea Party is facing. Here we have an interesting article on Christmas Eve. The Washington Post put in an article here about the Tea Party largely silent on the fiscal cliff. And here we read about the peregrinations of a certain Jenny Beth Martin. Jenny Beth Martin, this charming lady, is the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. So she came to Washington in the last week or two and has discussed with, Congressman Tom Price of Georgia, Steve Scalise of Louisiana, and Phil Gingrey, Georgia. These would be the extremoids that we've been talking about, but not about federal issues, only about state issues. States. She talked mostly about state issues during her meetings. Now, I think this is a sociological tendency, that the Tea Party foray into the federal government has been catastrophic, and even for the backers and for others, that it doesn't pay off. It doesn't give you the bang for the buck. The return is not there. So what I see, frankly, for the Republican Party, and we'll try to talk about this, is to collapse into this regional, racist, xenophobic, embittered, resentful political formation. Notice that in the state of California, this is pretty much what has happened to the Republican Party. In 1994, we had Governor Pete Wilson proposing Proposition 187. Proposition 187 cut off state services to undocumented foreign workers. Since the passing of that, the growing Latino community of California has correctly seen the Republican Party as deadly enemies. The Republican Party in California is essentially a vestigial wreck. Only under certain extraordinary circumstances with Schwarzenegger could they get anybody elected. This is the fate at the national level. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Now, we were hoping to get a report from Benton Harbor, Michigan, and from our friend Reverend Pinckney on the situation in Michigan now under not just the emergency manager law, which has been defeated for the moment, but also the union-busting law and some protests on the national level that I know he's planning. Do we have Reverend Pinckney?
Yes, Reverend Pinckney is here.
How you doing, Reverend Pinckney?
Hey, I'm doing great. How you doing today?
Happy New Year.
Same to you. Same to you.
Well, let's not lose any time. You're there in Benton Harbor, Michigan. You were part of the campaign that rolled back the emergency manager law there in the November election. In the meantime, Governor Snyder is trying to bust all the unions, but you also have something in store for the, I guess it's the annual meeting of the NAACP. So why don't you take it away and tell us all about it?
Well, let me start first with the city of Benton Harbor. Benton Harbor, like I said before, is the first city that has its very own dictator, and was placed there by our very own Governor Snyder. But here's the deal. We went out and got the 226,000 signatures, put it on the ballot, won, actually defeated it. And then just Thursday, Governor Snyder signed a new law, a new emergency manager law, and it goes into effect in 90 days. It's tougher than the last one. It cannot be repealed. We cannot go out and get signatures and put this thing on the ballot to have it removed. It's almost ridiculous when you think about it. It gives the emergency manager even more power to terminate the mayor, all the elected officials, terminate the union, and everything else. Also, right to work. Governor Snyder signed that bill. And what it had done is defeated the union here. That's what it was designed to do, break up the union. And now the union is scrambling. We have all kind of issues here in the state of Michigan and also in the city of Benton Harbor. But we're fighting back. Matter of fact, we're going to have a meeting this Saturday with the union, probably 3,000 to 4,000 people, and we're going to start fighting back even more because we know that we have to do something to make this thing that important. But look, you people out there who don't understand the emergency manager, read about it. Look it up. It's strictly a dictator, a person who can come in and do whatever he wants and is coming to your city next. So brace yourself unless you come in and fight this thing. Also, the NAACP.
Okay.
Who would believe that the NAACP was anything like this? They have partnership with the corporations to go against the community, not just here in the city of Benton Harbor, but around the country. Right now, we have over 20 former presidents of the NAACP branches who is working hand in hand with me to prepare ourselves for the big demonstration in California, February the 1st, at the NAACP Image Awards. And here's the thing that people don't know about the Image Award. The Image Awards was started by a branch in Hollywood, California. It was doing so well, the branch was, that the national office decided to come in and take it over. And even the members, it was like they had one of the largest branches that you can have. But the NAACP national office, anytime you're doing good, anytime you're doing things, they'll come in and take it over, and there's nothing you can do. And this is what's happening with the NAACP. First of all, they are misrepresenting the black community. They're doing that. We must stop the NAACP from exploiting their members and their ancestors. And my belief is that what they're simply doing is pimping their members. They really don't need the members other than to say they got a force, because the money they get from the corporations oversees everything. And this is what they've been doing for years. They've been doing the same thing, the same identical thing for years. And it's time that we stop giving them a free pass and start holding them accountable. One thing about the black community, we give each other a free pass. Just like the election came up. They came to me and told me that we are going to push Obama. I told them that we're a 501c3. We can't do it. They said, no, you're going to do it because we said you're going to do it. I said, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to push Obama for the simple reason we're a 501c3 and we'll be in violation. And they didn't like that. So what they do, they try to force you to do things that you know that you shouldn't be doing. And if you don't do it, they're going to come after you. They have done everything that you could think of in order to do things to hurt our community. They're out of touch with the black community, you know. And, you know, some of the things that we're demanding that Ben Jealous resign. We're demanding that the members elect the president of the NAACP and not the board members, because they're all in bed together. You know, that we demand that they sit down with Pfizer. Pfizer, a lot of people don't understand what Pfizer really does. They got this depot for Viria product. It's an interjectable contraception that is the deadly birth control in the whole world.
Right.
And the government have funded this product to deliberately target black people. And what we want to do, and the person that's on the board is the head of the Brooklyn office, Karen Borkentown. She's the head of that group, and she's also on the board for Pfizer. See, just recently, I just found out when my daughter was in college, she used that. And I couldn't figure out why she would be so sick all the time. She just told me just recently that she was taking it. And now it hit home. So now I'm really angry, and I'm very upset. And I told her that this is something that we should have discussed. But I guess, how do you discuss birth control with your daughter? You see, so that's what this is all about. But I tell you, we are demanding right now to have a sit-down with Pfizer and tell them to stop producing that contraception. We do not want that in our community. And here's the thing, too. We want to audit the NAACP. We want to audit, find out who's giving them money so we'll know exactly what they're doing. And we're demanding this. We're not asking. We're demanding. And that's why the demonstration on February the 1st is so important, because nobody, especially black people, they don't even stand up to the NAACP. They won't even, look, the NAACP get away with so much that it's almost criminal what they do. And nobody ever say anything. We're walking around here like they're doing everything for our community, and what they're doing is done. Here's an example. After we got those 226,000 signatures, the NAACP in Detroit called a press conference like they had done it. Would you believe that? Like they had done it. They called a press conference, telling them, and we're taking these signatures to Lansing on Wednesday, and we were in Lansing. They called another press conference. We are bringing the signatures in. They're having a press conference telling how wonderful the NAACP is. But this is what goes on. And I tell you, it's enough to really make you say, I've had enough. It's time that somebody stand up to the NAACP and say no more. Say no more. And the news media, the NAACP can call a press conference. They'll come from everywhere, knowing that they have done nothing. So you can't understand.
We got to break down for a couple of minutes. Can you stay and give us another 10 minutes? I'd like to ask you some specific questions.
You got it.
Okay, we'll be back then. Hang on. World Crisis Radio, back in 5. Welcome back to our second hour of World Crisis Radio. It's our New Year's program, the last program of the old year, 2012. We're drawing some lessons and looking forward. But right now, we're honored to have with us on the line from Benton Harbor, Michigan, an authentic mass leader of our time, and that is Reverend Pinckney, who's been telling us, I think, some fascinating things about what's been going on in Michigan and what he's planning now for a nationwide protest. Reverend Pinckney, let me just ask you, I want to get listeners, first of all, take out a pen and paper and try to write some of these things down, because you may want to attend some of these. You're talking about a protest at the annual meeting of the NAACP on February 1st, am I right?
Yeah, it's the Image Award. It will be televised nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does this occur?
It's in Los Angeles, California, okay. And the address is 665 West Jefferson, and it's going to begin at 2 p.m. That's when we're going to start our march, and we're expecting hundreds and hundreds of people to show up.
Okay, so if you want to, this is a protest now. This basically says that the NAACP, their current leaders should step down, and there should be an election among the members to determine who the new president should be. Is that about right?
That's it. That's what we're saying.
So February 1st in Los Angeles at the NAACP Image Awards, 2 p.m. on that February 1st, 665 West Jefferson in Los Angeles, California, and people should come, right?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, we should flood that community. That means black people, white people, Mexicans, you name it, you should be there, because this is an opportunity for people to step to the plate and say, we're not going to take this mess no more. We have people who they place in leadership to confuse the community and to hold you back. And this is what I believe, that these hand-picked leaders that they have running the NAACP is designed to neutralize the community.
So it's basically a kind of mechanism of social control that doesn't fight for anybody's rights.
Absolutely. And
okay.
For the last 40 years it's been with the NAACP, but we're too afraid to challenge them. They got the government supporting them. They got black bourgeois, black folks supporting them. You can't say nothing about the NAACP. I had a guy call me from Seattle, Washington. He said, Reverend Pinckney, why are you attacking the NAACP and everything they have done? I said, yeah, but that's the past. This is the present.
Right.
And he kind of like decided that he was going to burn his car. And here's something, too. We have burned 3,947 NAACP cars. Every Sunday at 5:30, we burn the NAACP cars. And we are getting a lot of people who are beginning to understand that the NAACP has just been put in place to neutralize us.
All right, so the current president should quit, there should be an election, and they should be audited to see if they're getting money under the table from these powerful corporate interests.
Absolutely. No question about it. No question about it.
Now, the other thing you talked about, of special interest to people there, I guess, in southwest Michigan, you talked about a meeting on Saturday with the, I guess it was the UAW or...
UAW asked me, it's going to be a group of people, because here's what happened. The UAW failed to actually finance the election on November the 6th, not only to help with the proposal 1, but they had their very own proposal, which was 2 on there. It was simply said that they can collect and bargain. We should be able to have collective bargain. That's what it said.
Right.
And they failed to even finance it. And that's one of the reasons why they lost theirs, but we won ours. See, they was counting on the people voting for 1 and 2. But they failed. When they came down, they didn't want to put no money into it, not a dime. And that's why it was defeated.
It sounds like the UAW, they got because we followed this. The second proposition was you have a right to collective bargaining. That failed, but that they put the UAW put their money and effort into the Obama campaign and figured that the ballot question would take care of itself, and unfortunately it didn't.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, you are 100% correct, because they figured one thing, that black people was going to come out and vote for Obama. And if you vote for Obama, you're going to vote for proposal 1 and 2 for sure.
Right.
Matter of fact, but it didn't work that way, because they didn't come down here and educate the people about 2. You see, we were going around talking about 1. We didn't have the resources to even talk about 1 and get people together. But we did tell them to vote 1 and 2. Most people, I said we lost, so they voted against it. But that's on the union. The union didn't want to spend no money.
Now, the meeting on Saturday that you mentioned, is that a leadership meeting, or can the average person come to that? What does it take to get into that? Anybody
can come, because we want to get the numbers up. Matter of fact, right now, we're running behind. And the right to work was devastating. It took the wind out of the union.
Right.
And by doing that, they call themselves now, Governor Snyder, he have neutralized the union. But we plan to fight back. Like I told them, just look at this as a rallying cry. Let them know that you have to, if you're going to win, if you got the money, you got to spend the money. You see, and that's what they did. They went out and spent money to defeat 2 and 1, but 1 passed and 2 failed.
So can you tell us again, for the people who would like to come to that, right? If you're somewhere in, northern Indiana, or because we do have some people in South Bend and places like this.
Very good. It's going to be here.
Where is that one?
It's going to be here in the city of Benton Harbor at 275 Pipestone. Zip code 49022. You can MapQuest it. It's the church. It's a big church, and we're going to bring people in, and we're going to discuss our next move, the next thing we're going to do, and we're going to force the union to put up this money and help, rather than sitting back trying to get something for nothing.
So they're going to be there. 275 Pipestone?
275 Pipestone Avenue in Benton Harbor, Michigan, 49022. And that's at 12 noon.
12 noon on Saturday.
On Saturday.
Saturday.
Absolutely.
First Saturday in January.
Well, not January, last Saturday in December.
Oh, you mean, so this is the 29th of December?
Right.
Okay, 29th of December.
Absolutely.
There we go. That's the first day this program will be on. So if you hear this, you better get over there fast.
Absolutely.
Now, Reverend, the other thing is, in our limited time, if people want to help you, I can imagine a lot of people want to help you, because you are a fighter, and you don't quit, and you don't get demoralized, and you don't give up. So that looks to me like a pretty good investment. If people want to give you some help, what can they do?
They can make out a check to Banco, BANCO, and they can mail it to 1940 Union, Benton Harbor, Michigan, 49022. Let me repeat that. Banco, B-A-N-C-O, 1940 Union, Benton Harbor, Michigan, 49022. And you can go to my blog. Also have the address on there. It's bhbanco.org. And you can call me if you wish at 269-925-0001. That's 269-925-0001. And we're going to win this battle. That's what I'm telling folks. We're going to defeat these folks. Because I tell you, fascism got to go.
That's the spirit. Now, just one or two last things. Concerning the new emergency manager law, is there not some possibility that some, American Civil Liberties Union or somebody would come along and say, oh, this is now clearly an attempt to have a new law that mimics the old law, and it's an attempt to frustrate the will of the people as expressed in this referendum and get it struck down at some level?
Absolutely. That's going to be part of the discussion on Saturday.
On Saturday.
Absolutely.
And that's Saturday, the
ACLU
29th of December.
That's right. Absolutely.
Thank you, Reverend. Happy New Year, and we want you to keep in touch with us now, because your news is
That's
important
news. That's a promise.
Okay. Bye-bye. See you soon, and we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. Reverend Pinckney is an amazing fighter. Hats off to Reverend Pinckney. With a couple of hundred such people, you could move the needle here in the United States and around the world. Now let's just take one last look at the cliff. The news coming in is that Obama is going to meet with the parliamentary cretins at 3 p.m. at the White House here on the 28th of December. It's going to be a smaller offer. The Republicans are talking about letting taxes go up on those over $400,000, plus then a stall of 60 to 90 days on the automatic sequester, and there would be something about extending unemployment benefits. These are all unconfirmed rumors. We don't know what it's going to be. The thing that it must not be is if it's the chained CPI, the Democratic Party is over. Obama's presidency is finished. If Obama wants to make sure of his own impeachment, attack your own base, Obama, and without your base, you'll be nothing, and you'll have no visible means of support, and the fascistoids there will be quick to draw the consequences, and you will be out. That is what's waiting for Obama. If you destroy the ideological basis of the Democratic Party, why then you won't be around very long. The things that I would point to as the real substance of the danger of the fiscal cliff, the extended unemployment benefits, and that probably means over 6 months. We should, by rights, have open-ended, endless, limitless unemployment benefits. We don't. We were up to 99 weeks at one point in 2009 and so forth. That is all gone. Right now, it's the attempt to get it up to 6 months' worth of unemployment benefits. Republicans, of course, hate that because the unemployed, of course, are lazy. There's a world depression, and there are no jobs, but they're lazy. So the unemployment benefits have got to be included. The most sensitive is the food stamps. The Plan B of Boehner included killer cuts in food stamps. There must be no cuts in food stamps. Any cut in food stamps translates into deaths at the most direct level, because there are 50 million people who live on that and nothing but. So food stamps have got to be included, and this is now part of the Farm Bill. We need a Farm Bill. The Farm Bill has got to be passed. Those who produce and those who have this strange habit of eating had better worry about the Farm Bill, and that includes, in particular, the food stamp part of it, but also we ought to think about that concept of parity. We're demanding a return to parity prices at 110% of parity for the foreseeable future to try to replenish the tremendous depletion and looting of the farm sector over the last 20, 30 years. So we're being told that if this doesn't happen, we're going to go back to the parity price provisions of the 1949 Farm Bill, and milk will go to $8 a gallon. Well, milk is it's not much less than $4 a gallon, at least around here. So you can double the price of milk. I think that's probably exaggerated, but the idea is this: you cannot allow the price of a basic commodity to go below the cost of production and expect to have more of it. You're going to have less of it, and very soon you'll have none of it. So we want the Farm Bill passed, and we want 110% of parity, along with the other provisions in the UFAA, United Front Against Austerity proposals. Now, some good news here at the end of the year. The two political leaders, I would say, that have emerged in the course of 2012 as world historical figures, people of importance. These are Alexis Tsipras of the Syriza movement in Greece. And he is now joined, just on the other side of the Mediterranean, not that far away, by Hamdin Sabahi. These are now the two most interesting politicians in the world. They are leftist populists who have emerged in countries subjected to heavy attack by the CIA, of course, but also by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, in some cases the European Central Bank, and so forth. But the international financier oligarchy has been attacking Greece and Egypt in specific ways. Isn't it interesting that when civilization is most threatened, the last line of defense comes back to the countries of oldest civilization, right? Countries where civilization was founded. It's presumably an alliance between the Egyptian priests of a certain kind and the Solon people in Athens, right? You know that old dialogue there by Plato, where Solon goes to Egypt and gets his grounding there from the Egyptians. That's the cradle of civilization, and that's where the resistance has emerged. So good, it is welcome. Alexis Tsipras, we've talked about him a lot during the year, model of what can be done. And now we have another one, Hamdin Sabahi. Just in the last 24 hours, the Egyptian prosecutor, obviously a tool of Morsi, a tool of the Muslim Brotherhood, of the Ikhwan, that bunch of oligarchs, right? The Muslim Brotherhood is what? It's the Saudis. It's their money, the degenerate Saudi reactionary royal family, right? This thing out of the dim and benighted past. Their money, and then the people who make this up are doing the obvious maneuver, right? They're lawyers, doctors, rich businessmen. The oligarchy of the Arab world gravitates towards the Muslim Brotherhood. However, they can't come out and say, we're the party of money and social position and old families and so forth. They have to say, we're here to defend Islam and we're here to defend social solidarity. And in order to recruit a base, they've got to do works of social solidarity, because this is the tradition, and it's a good tradition. But that is not what they're into. And we see that now with Morsi making a dirty deal with the IMF. I have warned about this for about a year. To get this wretched $5 billion loan, Egypt has doubled the price of gasoline, increased the sales tax, although I think that's been put on hold, and the value-added tax is on the way, plus taxes on energy, transportation, and other important things that shouldn't be taxed. You should tax the stock exchange, not production, not anything that you want to foster. So that's Hamdin Sabahi, and they're now investigating him for inciting resistance against Morsi. Time to support Hamdin Sabahi of Egypt. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster G. Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. Do take a look at tarpley.net. You ought to get your copy of Just Too Weird, Bishop Romney and the Mormon Takeover of America, featuring polygamy, theocracy, and subversion. That is the story of the coup that almost was, as we see now, not just Romney and Ryan, but Karl Rove, the Orca machine. We had General Petraeus of the CIA. We had General Carter Ham. We had the U.S. AFRICOM, of course. We had the Admiral Goulet out there, Goulet, in the fleet off the Arabian Sea. We had the head of the Missile Defense Organization. We had the Gallup poll, the head of Lockheed, Senator Demented, the chief paymaster for the Koch brothers, and so forth. And all of that was attempting to take over the government with the help of the CIA Mormon mafia. And that is all described in there, in the deep historical roots, going back to Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and what they believe. And the rogue network of 9/11 synthetic terror made in USA becomes clearer when you read Just Too Weird. You begin to get the idea that the Mormon mafia is a significant part of the rogue network. Now, we were just talking about the two positive emerging figures of 2012, Alexis Tsipras of Greece and Hamdin Sabahi of Egypt. These are both populists, but left populists. Remember, the rule on populism is this. Cultural populism is garbage. It's a flim-flam. It's complete deception. It's George Bush, the elder with the horseshoes, or Ronald Reagan with jelly beans, or some other idiot wearing a plaid shirt, or Scott Brown saying that he drives a pickup truck, and all the rest of this. He drives a pickup truck, but he works for State Street Bank. Complete nonsense. We want economic populism, which means specific, deliver the goods measures to bring about amelioration of the standard of living, social, cultural, and economic progress. That's what we want. So that is what these guys are dealing in, Tsipras and Sabahi. So Sabahi is now under attack by the Egyptian state prosecutors because he incited resistance against Morsi. Well, what's an election campaign? He's also being attacked along with El Baradei, who is a Western puppet, unfortunately, and Musa, the former head of the Arab League. So that doesn't look too good. It looks like the old slogan about the Muslim Brotherhood was one man, one vote, one time, and that may be what they're trying to do. But Sabahi came in third in the election campaign. This is Nasserism. This is what you need in the Arab world and in the Middle East in general. This is anti-imperialism. Sabahi is attacking Morsi, saying, Morsi, you are not a populist. You've given up on populism. You're now towing the line for the IMF. Morsi's line is, we want the free market, we want the free market. And Sabahi is telling him, no, we don't want the free market. The free market destroys countries. Haven't we learned anything over the past 10, 20 years of countries that have been wrecked by the so-called free market? Free market is the powers of evil, and protectionism, dirigism, and mercantilism is what modern countries need to survive. There's also some very interesting stuff going on in France, which we'll talk about in the coming days. Deglobalization, rolling back the process of, what can we say, wild capitalism, right? Capitalisme sauvage. Roll that back and replace it with something more regulated. And I say this because none other than the Philodoxer writes about that in the past week or so. The Philodoxer, Bernard-Henri Lévy, BHL. BHL, fresh from fomenting the genocidal attack on Libya through his advice to Sarkozy, he is now pointing with alarm to movements in French society to roll back the depredations of globalism. And we'll be watching that. That is a worthwhile effort for the people who are doing it. Sabahi says to Morsi, we don't want the free market. We want a regulated economy. Stop selling out national sovereignty to the IMF. And this is Sabahi who has all the credentials. He was in jail under Mubarak. He fought Mubarak as hard as anybody in the Muslim Brotherhood and harder. And he stands up there now saying no to the dictatorship of the army and no to the theocratic dictatorship of the clergy. And it's not even the clergy, it's the Muslim Brotherhood, meaning Saudi Arabia and their rich clientele inside Egypt. And the new constitution, a step back from the Mubarak constitution. So there we are. Now, we're also very concerned about Syria. I think people know the picture. We're concerned about the fate of Anna Kuchneva, the Ukrainian journalist who has been kidnapped by the death squad. She's being held. They're demanding $50 million ransom. And we're told that in Syria, another echelon of killers have been brought in. It's like 1,000 terrorists have been shipped in from Libya and other places to try to drive more wedges into the neighborhoods near Damascus. These are foreign fighters. Remember, the heart, the nerve and fist of the rebellion are not Syrian. They are foreign fighters. We're told that 1,000 members of the Pakistan Taliban have been killed by the Syrian army. The Pakistan Taliban making up a significant part of the rebellion. We've got other people from Chechnya, from Somalia, from Kurdistan, and so forth. The precondition for such a situation is the economic depression in the Eastern Mediterranean, North Africa, and all the way out to the gates of India. That is to say, when you have a depression, when you have large numbers of young men with no jobs, no families, no prospects, no dignity, they can be organized by apocalyptic, demagogic preachers, the Elmer Gantries of Islam, in this case, and all of them paid by Saudi Arabia, and then brought in to try to destroy a progressive Arab regime. And you can see the progressive side is that Syria continues to have those same food and fuel subsidies, bread subsidies, which are being now dismantled by Morsi of the IMF in Egypt. We'll probably have the Muslim Brotherhood rebaptized as Friends of the IMF. In the middle of it, for those who are following the Benghazi case, the Washington Post reveals more than they have about the CIA, the Global Response Staff, GRS. We're told that the GRS of the CIA is a group of hundreds and hundreds of trained killers. They're contractors, Blackwater types, ex-Delta Force, ex-SEALs, ex-Special Forces, and so on down the line. And they were there, and that's that CIA annex that we've been telling you about, in which the remember Jason Chaffetz, the Mormon congressman and Romney backer, tried to hide the existence of the CIA annex. The Global Response Staff was the main element present in Benghazi. They were told by the Petraeus bureaucracy, stand down, don't do anything to save the life of Stevens. I guess Stevens was somebody who had to be liquidated because he knew too much, right? It's part of the cleanup of this tremendous fraternization of the U.S. with al-Qaeda that threatens the political future of somebody like Hillary Clinton and Petraeus himself. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Last segment here of our last program of the old year. Remember, keep in touch with Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed, especially if big sellouts come down and you want to know when and where to protest. You've already got your marching orders there from Reverend Pinckney. For those in the Indiana, Michigan area, it's Saturday the 29th of December at noon, I believe. Get over there right now if you hear this. And then in February 1st in Los Angeles at the NAACP Image Awards. Just to give you an idea, though, of what kinds of lunatics, what kinds of yahoos and sociopaths are dictating U.S. policy with this ability of the Tea Party caucus, the Stormtrooper caucus, capable of threatening the entire United States government with a shutdown. let's look at this interesting reporting in the Washington Post this week about the fight for control of Freedom Works. And it goes like this. We have Dick Armey, of course, is a hack. He's a Republican hack politician. He was Gingrich's right-hand man in 1994. This was the majority leader of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives for quite a number of years. Dirty, discredited, corrupt. And he becomes the leader of the Tea Party? Are we crazy? This is always so clear, right, that these existing hacks like Bachmann and Dick Armey, that they try to get a new lease on their careers by pasting Tea Party onto their sleeves. So it's a fight now for Freedom Works, which is it's a cash cow. It's one of these think tanks. A lot of these duped characters, ideologues, petty bourgeois, brokers, and so forth, they give their money to Freedom Works. There are others, right? We've already talked to you about I keep wanting to say Mary Beth, but you know who I mean, of Tea Party Patriots. We've got Tea Party Express. We've got Americans for Prosperity. That's the Koch brothers. But now we're talking about Freedom Works. So here's the power struggle at Freedom Works. One day in September, Dick Armey, with an entourage, including one armed goon packing a pistol, walks into the headquarters of the Freedom Works, and he confronts a guy called Kibbe and his sidekick Brandon, the Kibbe-Brandon clique. Kibbe is a guy you've seen on television. He's the one with the mutton chop sideburns. He comes on MSNBC and some others occasionally. Kibbe and Armey, of course, had been working together on a book, which made them a lot of money. The whole thing is about money, needless to say. So what happens is this armed delegation walks in, and Armey says to Kibbe and Brandon, "Get out of here, and I've got an armed goon who's going to escort you out." Now, if these characters had their own Bushmaster or their own Kalashnikov, then we might have seen something really interesting. Gunplay to decide the control of Freedom Works. Right? As it was the gunfight at the OK Corral, but it was rather one-sided. So Kibbe and Brandon get let out of the building. However, they then counterattack. They go to the billionaire Richard Stevenson, Stephenson. He is the top honcho at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Stevenson comes back in on the side of Kibbe and Brandon. They buy off Armey for $8 million. Now, if you ever gave any money to Freedom Works, how you feel about the fact that your money doesn't go for any reactionary cause that you hold dear, but to line the pockets of the discredited Republican hack Dick Armey. How about that? So Armey is bought off with this $8 million from Stevenson, and now Stevenson has his own Tea Party organization. It's a grassroots organization, of course, in the same way that Americans for Prosperity is owned by the Koch brothers, and similarly for the Tea Party Patriots, Tea Party Express, and these other hucksters and profiteers. Stevenson, here we're reading from the Washington Post, Stevenson has a passion for libertarian politics, stretching back to the 1960s when he attended seminars featuring Atlas Shrugged author Ayn Rand and economist Murray Rothbard. Boy, two crackpots and fascists, two fascist crackpots, I should say, if there ever were any. Armey and Stevenson was an early supporter of Citizens for a Sound Economy, the lobbying group funded by oil billionaires Charles and David Koch in 1984 that split into Freedom Works and Americans for Prosperity in about 2004. Now, the Washington Post, of course, keeps the illusion that these are conservative groups. These are raving reactionary groups verging on outright, proto-fascism, neo-fascism. What can we say? So that's who's making policy. Isn't that reassuring? People who go around in Washington with pistols and take over organizations, except it's good that the billionaires can come in and save the day from this point of view. Now, the big change of the past year is this question of the party realignments. And unfortunately, we don't have very much time left. We meant to talk about this more. Maybe we'll have an epiphany program next week that will allow us to talk about it. But again, we have now passed from the sixth U.S. party system, the Nixon inaugurated one, from 1968 to 2008. We were under the realm of the reactionary Southern strategy, theorized by Kevin Phillips, consolidated during the 70s, during that period of Nixon, Ford, Carter, and then finally Reagan, with whom it is then finally consolidated. We're now in a new party system. The formula for dominating the Electoral College can no longer be the Southern strategy. It cannot be the South plus Christian evangelicals plus white men plus rural voters plus racists and so forth. The main issue is no longer the 1964 Civil Rights Law and the abreaction against that, although we saw Ron Paul, Rand Paul campaigning against the 1964 Civil Rights Law this time. The racist backlash against the 1960s is no longer the dominant issue, but we've now got a new formula in the Electoral College. Hispanics, blacks, Asians, women, youth, and, yes, something vestigial we can call labor. And it looks like that's going to dominate the Electoral College. Now, unfortunately, stress again, this is merely the playing field. This really doesn't guarantee very much. It simply means that the old lineup is over. The 1968 to 2008 lineup is finished, and we're now in new territory. And the new territory is, I believe, more promising than the old territory. The previous 40 years, a declining standard of living, the decline of organized labor, constant loss of wars or futile, destructive imperialist wars that were lost in substance even when they were won on paper. The parallel degeneracy of the Democratic Party starting in the 1980s under Tony Coelho of the House Democrats, who told the Democratic Party, you should not depend on labor or other organizations because you can get on television using money just like the Republicans do. So focus on money, forget about labor and other organizations. You don't need mass organization. All you need is money to get on TV. Even the trends of the get out the vote machine by Obama last time would seem to indicate that it's clear that television is not enough and that the pendulum has now swung back to the need of a fairly articulated grassroots operation to turn out the vote. So what we'll be doing in the coming weeks is to compare the current terrain with the previous 40 years. And this is an important job for us because everybody's instinct, everybody's unspoken assumption tend to reflect the 1968 to 2008 situation, and that is now rapidly changing. So bring it on. So Happy New Year to all. This is Tarpley in Washington, D.C., signing off, and we'll see you again with our special Epiphany program in 1 week on World Crisis Radio.